African forces drive out al-Shabaab fighters from a key stronghold in southern Somalia. And with new elections announced for later this year, could this failed state be finally turning a corner after more than 20 years of war? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Sika. Well, Somali government troops backed by African Union forces captured a strategic town near the capital Mogadishu after al-Shabaab militants pulled out. The town of Afgoye was a major stronghold of the group, giving its fighters easy access to the capital. Al-Shabaab still controls much of the country, but many analysts say Afgoye's loss is a blow for the group. On the political front, leaders from different Somali factions have agreed to a timetable that will elect a new president by August 20th, ending the transitional period of the UN-backed interim government. Well, Somalia has been without an effective central government since 1991 and has been racked by fighting ever since. It is a situation that has allowed piracy and lawlessness to flourish. So who controls what in Somalia? Well, the country has essentially been divided into three distinct regions: the self-declared Republic of Somaliland, the semi-autonomous state of Puntland, and South and Central Somalia, including the capital Mogadishu, where the transitional federal government is based. In February, the UN Security Council authorized an increase in the troop ceiling for the African Union mission in Somalia, or ANISOM as it's known, from 12,000 to 17,000 troops. This is after Kenya beefed up security along its border with Somalia by sending 5,000 troops. Ethiopian troops returned in force to Somalia last year after withdrawing in early 2009. Al-Shabaab fighters control most of the south and central Somalia. But as we mentioned, AU forces have now taken the strategic town of Afgoye, which was the gateway to the capital. So is Somalia finally turning a corner after 20 years of war, or can we expect more of the same? Well, to help us answer this question, we're joined by our guests. From Nairobi, we have Augustine Mahiga, former ambassador to the UN and head of the United Nations Political Office for Somalia. And joining us from London, Jamal Osman, an award-winning Somali journalist who has reported from al-Shabaab-controlled areas extensively. Good to have you both with us, gentlemen. Augustine Mahiga, if I could start with you, just to explain to us how all of this is going to work and how you see this process developing on the political front.
This is an unprecedented moment. There is united action by the key stakeholders of the Somalis. They are united in their efforts to come with a political process that is united. This is different from any other efforts before because it is in a much more secure environment which has been provided by the National Army of the Somalis and AMISOM. There is also a greater engagement and support from the region as well as from the rest of the international community. This has never been before. It is a combination of positive elements which we hope will be sustained in the coming remaining 85 days before the end of the transition.
So what will happen in August then when a new parliament and president are elected?
It's not only the new parliament, there'll be a new interim constitution which will define the way forward after August. And the new parliament will be smaller and with more qualified people. Will elect the president, and this will be an indirect elections, but would represent new institutions that will carry forward the peace process after August. And the new interim constitution will be the radar that will provide the direction in which to go and consolidate the new institutions and the new leadership.
But why should, I know you've said that this time things are going to be different, but as you well know, of course, we've had numerous transitional governments in Somalia, many of them negotiated from outside the country. Why should Somalis believe that this time things should be any different?
The fact that it is taking place in Somalia is itself an achievement. It is a Somali-owned process. It is all the key political stakeholders who have come together and are sticking together. It is, in a sense, prioritized goals and tasks which have been evasive and alluded to, but at the same time, there is a much more secure environment, and there is greater international and regional engagement. And the combination of these three factors make it very different from anything we have witnessed before.
But if you talk to a lot of Somalis, Ambassador Mahiga, they will say that things on the ground at the moment are far from secure, despite some of the military victories, which we will talk about in just a moment, we hope. But that's one part of the problem, they say. The other part of the problem is that this is a process that is still being, where they still feel that they are being dictated to from outside forces, and that this is really part of the problem. What do you say to that?
No, first of all, this is a much more different situation. 8 months ago, Mogadishu was not secure. Now it is fully secure, and the territorial security is spreading well beyond Mogadishu. But at the same time, there is greater engagement by the ordinary people through their representatives, and this makes it qualitatively a different kind of an environment and a different kind of engagement by the Somali people under Somali leadership. And there is indeed an issue that has never happened before, that the region, the immediate region, is engaged politically, is engaged militarily, and the rest of the international community is providing assistance to a predominantly Somali-owned and Somali-led process.
Jamal Osman, you've been listening to some of this. What is your view on all of this? Are you convinced that things will be different this time around?
No, as a Somali, I don't think that's the case. Mahiga said they are united, and he said this is a Somali-owned, and it's not. If you talk to Somalis, they will tell you this is coming from the foreigners. The foreigners are dictating what should happen to Somalis, and I haven't come across any Somali, apart from those within the government who are obviously working with the UN and the Western-led coalitions. The ordinary Somalis don't believe in this. And if you look at the constitution, for instance, it's not a Somali constitution. It's written and prepared by a Western-led, if you like, people. So I don't think Somalis feel this is theirs. They feel that this is something that others are dictating, and those who are leading this group is Mahiga, I think. So I don't think they are united on this, and I don't see many Somalis who believe in this constitution.
So what do you think is the solution then? You think that this needs to involve more Somalis in Somalia?
Yes, I think the more Somalis are involved, the better, obviously, because this is a Somali issue. But if people like Mahiga and the Western sort of representatives are saying, if you don't do this, we'll do something about it. Even some of the Somali politicians have been blackmailed and told, if you don't accept what we are offering, then something will happen to you. And that shows you these foreigners are forcing Somalis to accept what they are offering.
All right, let's talk about some of the conflict on the ground. As we mentioned at the top of the program there, African Union forces capturing that key town of Afguye, which is seen as a gateway to the capital, Mogadishu. At this point, we're going to bring in from Mogadishu Lieutenant Colonel Paddy Ankuda, who's a spokesman for the African Union forces in Somalia. Good to have you with us. I want to ask you, first of all, how important is this capture of this town?
Well, thank you so much. Afgoy town is a strategic junction in this conflict. Until 2 days ago, it was under the control of the Al-Shabaab. The African Union forces moved very fast, very swiftly, captured that town. It provides you a road leading up to Markaport, a road taking you to Baidoa town, and a road bringing you to Mogadishu. So in our view, the Al-Shabaab have lost a very strategic town in terms of military operations. But now, what we see is the need for the overall military successes to be linked into a political strategy so that we don't lose the military successes that we have seen.
So what's the end game here? I mean, what is your ultimate plan here on the ground as far as the battle with forces like Al-Shabaab?
Well, first of all, the Afgoy town was a home to over 400,000 people, and until we took it from the Al-Shabaab, the international community could not deliver humanitarian aid to the displaced people. Now, from yesterday, the entire Afgoy corridor is open, and therefore it can no longer be an obstacle. People can get aid from the international agencies.
I mean, sorry, let me jump on that. They were getting aid. I have traveled to Afgoy last year during the height of the famine, and some aid agencies, not all of them, were delivering food to Afgoy. So I think that's inaccurate to say the aid agencies were not delivering food to those areas.
Yeah, I want to ask you as well, Jamal. I mean, we've mentioned about this, the fact that this is a key strategic victory for African Union forces. Al-Shabaab forces are saying that this is a tactical retreat and they will be back. Do you believe that?
I do think so. I think it's very important to see this from a Somali perspective. I mean, you ask any Somalis, whether they are in Somalia or outside Somalia, and we say African peacekeepers, but Somalis describe them as mercenaries, if you like. So I haven't seen that many Somalis who really think the African Union soldiers are there to help Somalis. Most Somalis feel they are serving the interest of the West. They are paid and armed by Americans and Europeans, and they are part of this so-called global war on terror. And Somalis believe that is the main reason they are there. So to start, I don't see many Somalis who think African Union forces are there to help them. And in terms of Al-Shabaab, Al-Shabaab were not defeated as such. They vacated, so they still have their fighters, they still have their military equipment, and they are Somalis. They can easily go to somewhere and then come back. So I don't think Al-Shabaab are even outside Afgoy. They are around, and they are Somalis, and they can come back whenever they want. And they keep attacking places like even Mogadishu and other places. So they are not defeated yet, I think.
Ambassador Mahiga, if I could turn back to you, doesn't this plan need to include groups like Al-Shabaab at some point? Because eventually the fighting has to end at some point, and isn't it inevitable that there will have to be some sort of political solution that will involve them?
Definitely, this has been the objective not only of the key stakeholders in Somalia now who participated in the current peace process, but it has been the position of the United Nations Security Council to invite elements of the Shabaab to renounce violence and join the peace process. I hope sooner than later they will also be part of this process. I know it is something that has to begin from somewhere, but definitely the future of Somalia has to be more inclusive than it is now by including elements from the Al-Shabaab.
Lieutenant Colonel Nkunda, if I could turn back to you on this. We were talking earlier about the battle on the ground and the battle against Al-Shabaab. Is this battle being coordinated at all with the Kenyan forces that we mentioned at the top of the program to the south, and the Ethiopian forces on the western borders who've also been fighting Al-Shabaab?
Well, the Kenyan forces were approved by the United Nations to join AMISOM. And what is happening now is that the government of Kenya is attempting to conclude the memorandum of understanding with the African Union so that they can legally fall under AMISOM and integrate officially under AMISOM. However, they've been doing a great job. They've kept Shabaab at bay. The Ethiopian forces, on the other hand, are very ready to hand over to AMISOM forces for as long as AMISOM is ready to deploy all the battalions that have been decided to deploy in Baidoa, in Ba and Bakol region. And therefore, we think that in the coming days, we should see a scale-up of operations against the Shabaab that should be able to anchor very properly into the political process that is ongoing.
Do you believe the tide is turning against Al-Shabaab?
Well, we can't give a time frame as such. But what we know is that we have a mandate that is running And for as long as it is running, we will be able to conduct our operations within that framework. And when there will be need for the international community to renew that mandate, I think they will not hesitate for as long as the political process is ongoing.
Jamal Osman, if I could turn back to you on this, I want to ask you as well, I mean, because you mentioned about the idea that much of this, Somalis feel that much of this is being imposed on them by outside forces, and that you don't feel that that is really the way to go. Can we learn anything then from the autonomous regions of Somaliland and Puntland in the north? These are two functioning territories that have managed to pretty much work without much international assistance or involvement. Should that be the template for success in the rest of Somalia?
I think Somalis have proved that they can solve their problems if they are left alone. And as you mentioned, Somaliland and Puntland have proved that, because it's a Somali-led issue. They came together and said, let's solve our problems, and they are stable. They have got functioning systems, and South and Central could be done exactly the same. But I think the key issue is that the African Union and others are saying we want to liberate Somalia, but who are you liberating Somalia from? Somalis, Al-Shabaab are Somalis, and the only way you can bring peace and stability is to let Somalis talk to each other and negotiate. And I believe personally, and I have talked to Somali officials and Al-Shabaab, they can come together and reach a peace deal if they are left alone. But you have foreigners who are telling Somalis in the south what to do, and that is making the situation worse.
Ambassador Mahiga, what's your response to that? Leave the Somalis alone, let them deal with their own problems themselves.
It has been 21 years and nothing has been done. I know the ordinary Somali would want to see peace and stability come. And the ordinary Somali would certainly welcome the assistance of neighbors and the international community to facilitate solving that 21-year-old crisis and entering into the 22nd year. The examples of Somaliland and Puntland, of course, shows that Somalis, by themselves, can craft a political system and dispensation. And this is what we are seeking to be incorporated in the coming draft constitution. The Somalis will decide and will learn from the experience of the others, but at the same time, we would want to see a united and integrity of the Somali territory, but whatever is the future has to be decided by the Somalis. The rest of the international community can only assist. Somalia will not be the first country to be assisted by neighbors and the rest of the international community, because international peace and security begins from regional stability. What happens in Somalia is not only entirely for the Somalis, because it is affecting the rest of the world. It is affecting the peace and stability in the form of piracy, in the form of spillover of the problems inside Somalia, and there has to be this partnership, which is essential and an obligation of the rest of the international community to help assist the Somalis. But the leadership is there, and the ownership is there.
Yeah, Jamal Osman, I saw you shaking your head there.
I would like to ask one question to Mahiga. He said the regional governments, do you really think Ethiopia and Kenya would want to see Somalia as a stable country? Do you really think so?
Ambassador Mahiga?
It is in the self-interest of all neighbors to Somalia, but also it is of mutual interest to the Somalis as well. Like it is in any region, good neighborliness. The stability of one means the stability of all. The instability of any country, in any neighborhood, in any region, is instability of all. It is of mutual interest and accepted international and regional practice that there is good neighborliness, and it is for the interest of Kenya, of Ethiopia, of Somalia, of Djibouti, for Somalia to be peaceful and stable. And this cannot be an exception to any part of Africa.
All right, I want to turn back to... briefly, if you can, Jamal.
No, I was going to say it is in their interest to keep a weak government that they can control, but it's not in their interest to have an effective, a strong government of Somalia. That is been proven, and it's history, and I think you're missing the point.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Paddy Nkunda, if I could turn back to you on this. Obviously, the political developments are one thing, but that has to be presumably matched by a reality on the ground, which is something that you are involved in. And I want to ask you, I know you talked earlier about a time frame. How long at the moment are the AU forces supposed to be in Somalia for? And do you anticipate them being there for longer?
Well, at the point where we are now is that we would like to see political objectives getting properly integrated into an overall military strategy. I think this is going to be very, very key. So the determination of how long this mission is going to take is purely a result of the developments on the ground. The region has an interest in a peaceful Somalia because a peaceful Somalia will create a peaceful region. And therefore, I do not think that we should be interested in attaching a time frame to this situation here because it's been occurring, it's been here for 20 years. Therefore, we need to ensure that we have the resources that are required to support the international mission here in the form of force multipliers that AMISOM was given by the United Nations, in the form of progress on the political process, the roadmap, the conclusion of the constitution, in the form of dialogue and reconciliation down to the grassroots man in Somalia. I think when that happens, then the international community working together will determine when there can be a scale down of the forces that are in Somalia.
Jamal Osman, how do Somalis see the AU forces on the ground there?
I mean, as I mentioned earlier, you talk to any Somalis in public gatherings. If you go to a Somali cafe here in London or Mogadishu, when Somalis are talking about the politics, as I said, they don't describe the AMISOM as peacekeepers. They describe them as mercenaries. So there is suspicious there. I think that Somalis are quite suspicious about the whole mission. And I don't think they believe these African Union forces are going to bring peace to Somalia. They are only there to fulfill the interest of the West, and they will do as long as the Western governments are funding them, and that's what Somalis think. So people are suspicious about the whole mission, I think.
How do Somalis see Al-Shabaab, though? Do they want to be ruled by Al-Shabaab?
No, a lot of Somalis do not support Al-Shabaab. Obviously, they have support within the Somali society. But if you ask a Somali, I am sure they will say, we'd rather be under the Al-Shabaab rule than a foreign occupation. And it's as simple as that. That's the choice Somalis have, especially in the South Central. I mean, Puntland and Somaliland are safe and they have a functioning system. But South and Central Somalia, if you ask Somalis whether they prefer to have a foreign occupation or under Al-Shabaab rule, I'm sure most Somalis would prefer to be ruled by Al-Shabaab.
Ambassador Mahiga, I want to give the last word to you on this. How do you see this playing out?
At the moment, the traditional leaders of Somalia are in Mogadishu to perform two important tasks. One is to convene an 825 Constituent Assembly to adopt provisionally a constitution for the future deliberation after August. The second is to select and appoint new members of a leaner and more qualified parliament, which has to happen before the end of the transition. That parliament will give us a new president.
All right.
who would proceed to form a new government.
And on that note, we are going to have to leave it. Thank you to all three of our guests, Lieutenant Paddy Nkunda in Mogadishu, Ambassador Augustine Mahiga in Nairobi, and Jamal Osman in London. Many thanks for your time. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. Remember, if you want to send us your feedback, you can just email your thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.